Well, it's time to turn the tables here on Alex, who I think's a little bit of a closet race broadcaster. So I'm going to throw a challenge at you, Alex. The 2022 Caulfield Stakes.
Yep.
Big breath, just hold those
Heart rate's
nerves.
120.
Remember, you've got to live in that little cocoon in the broadcast box. You're calling it to your mum driving over the Westgate Bridge. 2022 Caulfield Stakes, away you go.
Righto, Trish, this one's for you. So they're coming around the home turn. Alligator Blood with Zaki serving it up. Thunderstruck off the bit. Animo lifting. Animo gets in front. Thunderstruck late. Animo! Animo gets the job done in the Caulfield Stakes.
I love it. Off the cuff, beautiful.
Yeah, I'm never doing that again. I don't think I've got a future in this one. This is the view of Matt Hill, the voice of many iconic calls. Now, as he looks out to close what is one of the more unique and interesting years in his life, from calling group racing in America, the Olympics in Paris, the AFL Grand Final, and of course, Group 1 features throughout the Spring Carnival, this is Matt Hill, and this is how he springs. All right, Matt, we are in your office for the day here and for most days where you're calling races. How do you sort of go about setting up and preparing for a race day?
Well, you say it's my office, and it is, but it's the best office in the world, isn't it? And there's no computers, no bosses looking over your shoulder. You get to watch racing, you get to have a bet. Most boxes are, seriously, they're the same. And race callers, if you look at a photo of a race broadcaster from the 1950s, it hasn't changed. It's literally a bench with a rickety old stand and a pair of binoculars. Those binoculars are just my best friend.
Once you shut this door here, you are shut off from the world, you're on your own island, but then the dulcet tones then go out to the many watching around Australia and the world.
My predecessor, Greg Miles, always said it's the loneliest place on earth, particularly on Melbourne Cup Day. It's the greatest office you could ask for.
Seeing everything on the day, not just the horses, but the people and what's going on, like the buzz and the anticipation before a race, does that sort of reverberate up here?
It does, and you have to be a little bit careful that it doesn't empower you too much. I try and imagine that I'm literally just calling to one person. Really, the only thing that changes is the quality of the horse flesh. What I do doesn't.
How do you prepare? Because obviously you made it at Sandown, you're likely to know the horses more so than when a couple of internationals are hopping off the plane for the first time in a Melbourne Cup with colours you may have never seen before.
What people don't realise with race broadcasting is it's a completely different preparation to any other sport. The one prep we can't do is the colours. Yeah. So we actually learn the colours about 8 minutes before the race. Ooh. So when the jockeys walk out, that's the most important time for a race caller.
The bigger fields are obviously much tougher than smaller fields. Are there little things? Are you looking for horses with maybe blinkers or a nose roll, maybe earmuffs?
It's all about cap colours when it comes to Lloyd Williams, and so we learn the colours so intrinsically that down the back straight, for instance, you should be able to get to a level where you spot a little speck of yellow and you should know who it is.
Grand final, 100,000 people at the MCG. Ideally not a great kit clash, so you can separate the two teams. How hard is it preparing for maybe if there's a team you haven't called as many times this year compared to maybe a Victorian team that you see a lot?
Well, I find the race caller comes out in me, so I do start looking for orange boots or yellow boots, and that's a great way of distinguishing. And I think a lot of people think football commentators use numbers, but we don't. Oh. Ignore the numbers to a certain extent because it's all about their faces. You have to know who they are.
So you're really hoping no one's bleached their hair the week of or shaved their lid or their mustache.
But it does happen, and what you tend to do with your co-commentators is you will make note of that half an hour before a game.
Lines like Homesman for the Music Man, a horse that's big odds in a bunch finish in a Group 1. How do you come up with a line like that under such immense pressure?
Well, the thing about lines in race calls is that you don't really plan them. I honestly do not go to any race meeting or any race thinking about lines in the car as I'm driving along. I don't think of that. They're just little bits of inspiration that come along. And I'm a big believer, they're great to use when they're there, but don't push yourself to do it. No one will ever criticise you for calling the race well. But if there's a little bit of a narrative there that works, absolutely.
Yeah, and you also had the big call of his win in the Caulfield Stakes, the start pride, now the Might and Power, where he's got over the top of them late. So there was a bit of the narrative, and your voice was sort of akin to Animo and winning these big events.
Definitely, and I think as a broadcaster, I genuinely adore horse racing. I mean, it wouldn't matter what race it is. I love being there and telling the story of it. Coming into the Spring Carnival now of 2024, we've got so many great stories. We've got a horse like Growing Empire who he could be our next big superstar.
Something like If Pride of Jenny, if all goes well for the rest of the carnival, and going by the school, she's 8 in front. and has them off the bit. I'm not saying you're going to plan a line, but surely that is something you just have to look forward to.
What I try and do is have words floating around and then it comes out organically, because you can tell when it's scripted. And unfortunately, or fortunately, when we had the scenario of black caviar or we had winks, that they were almost fait accomplis, so you did have to think about the script for those.
What are some of your favourite race calls that you've had sort of growing up listening to, be it a Bruce, a Greg Miles, or anyone around the world even? The
most famous sporting lines were virtually organic. So I think of Al Michaels, Do You Believe in Miracles, with the famous Russia-USA ice hockey match at the Winter Olympics. That part of the commentary virtually inspired a movie. It was imagery and it was off the cuff, and you can't beat that. You just have to be in the right place, calling the right event and come out with the right words, and it defines your career.
Have you had a race where it could be both, you've looked back on and gone, yep, nailed it, or have there been ones where you've gone, oh, I'd love to have that one over?
I think I would put my bag in the boot of the car twice a year and go, I don't know if I could have called much better. It's not an exact science, it's not a computer science. Microsoft haven't found a way of replacing us yet. AI might at some point, but it's the human brain. The greatest thing about race broadcasting is we don't get a second crack at it. I'd love to have another go, but we don't.
So it's an interesting week this week. You've got the Manikato Stakes Grand Final Eve. They've moved the race to that night, and it's going to be a massive spectacle at the Valley. And then you're calling the AFL Grand Final on Saturday. How does prep for a week like that go? Are you hoping that your voice doesn't disappear at some point?
The voice is a very resilient thing, believe it or not. But usually is to stay away from loud places. Getting to sleep is a real hard one, particularly with the grand final the next day. So that'll be the biggest challenge, I think.
How's the come down after calling such a big important meeting on a Friday night, knowing the next day at 2:30 the ball is going to be bounced in the grand final and people are expecting you to be in top shape?
So I think it was Michael Jordan, if I can quote one of the greats, said it's not about the sleep the night before, it's about the sleep the night before the night before. If I could get a good 10 hours in, then I'm sorted. Absolutely sorted. And adrenaline takes you a long way. It's the best job in the world, mate. I've got nothing to complain about.
What would you rather, a three-way diving go in the Manikato, or 15 seconds to go, the ball is bombed into forward 50 and we need a mark to have a shot to win the grand final?
The worst thing I can do is call the wrong winner in a photo finish. My real employer is the punter, and I don't want to let them down at all.
A big thank you to Matt Hill for giving up his time today. Safe to say I do not have a future in race calling. I'll let the professional do his job. Thanks to our partners in this, Racing Victoria. Of course, check out punters.com.au. If you haven't seen the other 4 episodes of this series that we have done, make sure you get to YouTube or the various social media accounts. It's all up there. It's ready to go. It's been a fantastic journey taking you through how they spring.